Good morning.
Morning.
We were going to do some lip balm making today.
And I forgot to bring this. I forgot to
remind
bring the stuff.
you.
Yeah, so it's your fault.
So we might do this next week.
Next week.
But we thought a great topic to talk about would be mental health, because I don't know about you, but I think the majority of us these days are aware of or affected by mental health.
And stress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mental stress. We've all got so much on all the time. There's so much to think about that it can become really overwhelming. I mean, like with you, because you've got so many things going on, you know, with your businesses. Yeah. I mean, you teach yoga, you run your centre.
Yeah.
And I think running a centre, it's everything that comes. People don't realise what
running a business is like.
Well, yeah,
especially when you've got people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Appointment scheduling, dealing with, you know, the day-to-day bit, everything. But then you also do your. I don't know how you do. How do you do it? And you've got a family, a young family.
I just get up and I do it.
Do you ever feel overwhelmed?
All the time. I struggle with overwhelm quite a lot. But also, I don't know how people fit in full-time jobs. Like, I don't get it. Like, if you have a family, how do you fit that in? Although I say that, technically I'm a part-time worker, but
I don't think you are.
No, because I'm like working at 6 o'clock in the morning in the bath.
Yeah, because I mean, I always see, when I go onto Facebook, you're always promoting your events, you know, your own yoga classes, everybody else's classes, you know, that you have at the you do your videos, you do your human design.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it does affect me. And I recently, my husband has said to me, our daughter has ADHD and a couple of other things, and I sometimes get like a massive sensory overload and then have a meltdown. And he said, do you think you might have ADHD or something? And I said, well, I've looked at it, you know, and just from my kind of Googling, I don't necessarily fit the mould for that. However, there's a thing called parenting overwhelm that apparently is a condition, and that I was like, oh, that's it.
Parenting overwhelm.
Yeah. Because I think I can manage all the things, but if one thing, you know, something happens in one of those things, I just break in all of them.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
And I think that's because we're not, as humans, we're not really evolved to deal with chronic long-term stress. You know, our nervous system is there to deal with short bursts of acute stress, which is why we have the fight, flight or freeze sort of mechanism that we all know. You know, our adrenals give off adrenaline if we're in danger, and we either run or fight, or some people freeze. And that's there for short bursts of acute stress. And so we're kind of evolved for that, but we're not evolved really. Our nervous system can't take these chronic stress, daily stress.
And I've talked about this a few times recently. Traditionally speaking, you could live off a one income household. You could have a family, one income, and then one other parent, if you've got children, you know, doing everything else. And then effectively you both still have full-time jobs. It's just that one's for life and then one's for business, you know. But you can't afford to do that anymore. You can't have a one-income household anymore. And so I think that we probably are experiencing chronic stress as a society because we're all overworked.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of it more from a female point of view, you know, women would be the one traditionally to stay at home with the children, do the housework and, you know, look after the home. But I suppose that changed really in the sort of 60s, where women well, the contraceptive pill was a big impetus for this, but women now can have it all. They want their career, they want to be successful, but they also want the family life.
I think great if you can manage it, crack on.
But I mean, my God, it's hard.
It's a lot, yeah. Hats off to anyone that can, because it's bloody hard. Well, I'm doing it.
Well, yeah.
It's hard. You know, I'm technically fulfilling that role.
I mean, I often think about this, obviously from a female perspective, because I am a female, but I feel, and from what I've seen with my perimenopausal and menopausal patients, this comes back to the adrenal glands and exhaustion, because I think women have a role where they want the career, they go to university, they get their career, then they want to have children, but they work as well. And then when sort of menopause or perimenopause hits, in my experience, a lot of women that come to me come with rage. They have this anger and this irritability, and it's not uncommon. In fact, I'd say it's very common for perimenopausal women to come and say to me something like, I just can't deal with my husband's breathing.
I get that.
Or he eats so loud. How come I didn't notice it before? And I feel it's because at this time where the hormones are adjusting, you know, estrogen is dipping, a lot of the stress that you've sort of allowed to go over your head because you've had to, during this time in a female's life, it comes up. And I often say it's a righteous anger, because as women, they've looked after the children, they've done the main bulk of the housework, the main bulk, not all, I mean, I am being very stereotypical here, but the main bulk of the cleaning, the shopping, and certainly childcare. And then they get to a point, perhaps the children have left home or they've gone to university, and they're left with their partner, and perhaps they're really not happy about it, and they haven't got the distractions maybe. And this is where I feel this is where a lot of the mental health overwhelm kicks in, because they are not happy that perhaps they've not wasted their lives, but they've spent a lot of their life looking after everyone else, and ultimately they're a bit peeved about it.
I can understand from a perspective of the majority of my clients, because I would say that most people come to me around that empty nester stage in life, once their children have grown up or moved out, and then often find that they start exploring themselves then. I think I've got a slight understanding of how this is coming to be now, and I don't think it will necessarily be the same in the future, because people used to have children younger. And so I know from my perspective, and a lot of other people that I know, we did so much growth in our 20s that when we got to our 30s, most people now don't have children until they're in their 30s. Whereas, you know, current generations of empty nesters, majority of those people would have had children in their 20s. And, you know, from my parents' generation, my parents didn't, but a lot of them would have had children in their teens. And so it's getting later and later now, but that means we're getting more and more time to learn about ourselves, to go on you know, and a lot of people now will start exploring this stuff a lot earlier, because they give themselves that time in their 20s and 30s, and they're building careers as well. And then having children a lot later. So I don't know if we'll necessarily experience that in the future in the same way, because I think that a lot of people would have had a good opportunity to discover themselves, to spend time meeting a partner perhaps that they truly are in alignment with, and not just going through the rite of passage of get married, have children.
I can't imagine what it would be. I mean, I was 21 when I had my son, and it was so exhausting. I mean, mind you, I was a single parent. His dad was quite involved, and did used to have him a lot of the weekends. So, I mean, I was really lucky there. I wasn't completely on my own, but I don't know how people do it when they're older.
I'm exhausted.
I mean, you know, I cannot. I mean, I suppose, yeah, if you, like you say, if perhaps you've got more income as well, so that maybe you can afford help.
That's another thing, yeah. The longer that you leave it, I guess, the more likely the chances are that you'll have more income and stability to do those things as well.
Yeah. We were going to talk about mental health, and I don't know how we've got onto this.
Well, we are,
but it is mental health.
We're talking about overwhelm.
Yeah.
Right, and I think overwhelm has a huge cause on mental health.
Oh, I remember now. I was going to link it to the adrenal glands. Right, okay, so this does link. So traditionally, when a woman goes through menopause and the ovaries kind of pack up, actually your adrenal glands can take over. Not as fully, obviously, as your ovaries, but they do take over. They're another endocrine gland, and they can really support your sort of sex hormones. And I feel that because women are so adrenally exhausted due to this chronic stress, this is where it links, that the ovaries just can't take over in the way that they would have done before. So often with my menopausal patients, I'll see a lot of adrenal exhaustion because of chronic stress and overwhelm. So often, instead of giving sort of plant estrogens, phytoestrogens, I will work specifically on the adrenals. And I think the adrenals are really important for people with, obviously, burnout. We all know burnout. But in a way, it's a similar thing.
It's a more long-term burnout.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lifetime of burnout.
Well, I do think that we live significantly more stressful lives in a different way, I guess, because, you know, if we think about our grandparents' generation, their stress would have been war, totally different type of stress.
Yeah.
Right, so that, of course, is an insane amount of stress condensed over a period of time, and then probably recovery from that for their whole lives. But I think we just live on a day-to-day basis busier lives than we ever did before.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think of a typical day for most families, it's up, get the children ready, get them fed, get them ready for school, pack their packed lunch, get their book bag ready. If you're driving to school, the road rage, the roads are so busy, and that's what, normally before 9 o'clock.
And school parking. Oof.
And then you're driving to work, or even if you're working at home, there's always just so much to do. And I think perhaps it's because we're so used to thinking of 100 million things.
Yes.
Whereas maybe in the past, you know, okay, now we've got washing machines and all of these white goods in our home were supposed to make life so much easier. And I'm sure they have. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be using a mangle and hand washing clothes. But has it? Are we happier?
Well,
I don't know.
I guess where we're replacing the, you know, hand washing the clothes, now a machine is doing it for us, but we're then still filling it with something else. We're not saying, let's rest at that time that I would have been hand cleaning clothes. And
I think it's frowned upon as well.
Oh, massively frowned upon.
It is, isn't it?
That word lazy really irritates me.
Procrastination, laziness.
I just think, like, you stop and you take a breath and you want to, I don't know, watch Netflix for an hour or you just want a day off, but that's considered lazy.
And I think oftentimes we're so socialised that we beat ourselves up. Because sometimes, I don't know if you have this, but do you ever have like a day where you are exhausted and you haven't got the motivation really to do anything.
I won last week. I planned on working all day and I just sat there staring into space most of the day.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, is that a reset where we should just be going with our body?
Just honouring it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we should do. But then, of course, your little head...
The monkey chatter.
You should be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you sitting down?
Mm-hmm.
You're being lazy.
Got a to-do list like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even on a day where physically our body is exhausted and so we're not really doing a lot, the brain's still going on. And that leads me to this tea.
Oh, yeah.
So this tea we had last week, which was...
Well, you've slightly modified it this week, haven't you?
Yes, I've added chamomile this week. So this is skullcap and chamomile. And it's a really good blend to stop that circular thought, monkey brain, monkey chatter. Because sometimes you just want to break from your own head.
So earlier when you said to me, how do I do it? I think the way that I do it is because what I do for a job is all the things I would recommend to people to do. So I've engineered, I know myself. I know I get exhausted easy. I know I get overwhelmed easy. I know I suffer from mental health challenges. I know that I'm terrible at being employed because I don't like being told what to do. So I have engineered my life so that when I am working, what I'm actually doing for my work is stuff that is going to bring me down, is going to ground me, is going to calm me. And yes, the operational stuff around that, like, you know, the marketing and the dealing with the team and all of the other things that you have to do for a business, the finances and everything else, you know, that stuff's a bit more tricky. But the actual what I do as a service gives me as much benefit as it does to the people that I'm working with.
And you enjoy it, and you do it because you feel the benefit of it, and it's your calling, isn't it? I suppose for people that are working jobs that they really don't like,
Majority of the world.
do you think that's the majority of the world?
How many people do you know that if you said, if you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still go back to work? And everyone's like, no. That tells me all those people are misaligned. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I might make some adjustments, like employ a business manager, but I'd definitely still be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I would. I think it would give me a greater freedom, but essentially I would always want to be doing research into herbal medicine and seeing patients.
So how do you do it? Because you're not only, I'm doing it from a place of being financially supported by my husband. How are you doing it? Did you secretly win the lottery?
No. I think, I mean, I do have moments of real overwhelm, you know, and you can feel that anxiety sort of, for me, it builds in my belly and then it kind of rises up. And I have to tell myself it's excitement. So excitement and nerves, anxiety, actually are very, very similar. So I try to trick my brain into being excited about things. But also, every morning I do about 20 minutes of yoga with a little bit of breath work. And I've done that every morning for at least the last 2 years. I used to allow myself the weekend off, but I don't now because I just feel so much better doing it. And it's like that, for me, it's the little micro win. If I start the day where I feel, oh, well done, I've done my yoga and I've done my breath work, you start the day on a really positive note. Whereas if I don't do it, I actually start with feeling bad that I haven't done it. So
that's interesting, yeah.
So I will allow myself, if I do miss one day, that's fine. Because sometimes life, if you're travelling or you're staying with friends, you know, I'll allow myself to miss one day and I don't beat myself up. But I don't allow myself to miss 2 days in a row. That's my little trick.
I love this concept of micro wins. Someone just gave us some balloons. Did you see? You must have missed that on the screen.
I missed it. And I haven't got my glasses on. I haven't got my glasses on because if I have my glasses on, I get too focused on watching the screen. So because it's a complete blur, sometimes the world is better in a blur.
In a blur, yeah. Ignorance is bliss, right?
I think sometimes it is, actually, yeah.
Micro wins. I love that concept. And this is actually, because you kind of asked me earlier, how do I fit it all in? When I say I'm, 6 o'clock in the morning working in the bath, I mean it. But for me, it's a micro win. Like, great, I'm one of those people that does like a half-hour bath every morning. It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, so that for you, that's your time for yourself. That's your you time where you integrate the day.
Yeah. And if in that, in the bath, I can do like a 10-minute task for work, and then I'm like, great, that's one thing off my list today. It's a micro win, and I enjoyed it because I was relaxing in the bath while I was doing it.
Yeah.
And then I can still have 20 minutes of peace in the bath. Well, peace, that's screaming kids. But yes, so I love that concept of micro wins, and I never really thought about it in that respect, but that is how I work. You won't get me, generally speaking, sat down for an 8-hour block working, but you will, like, even if I'm watching Netflix in the evening, I'll be doing something.
Yeah.
And I'll just fit it in. Or, on the school run, if I get there 10 minutes early, I can sit in the car and do 10 minutes of work.
And I think the opposite side to that, which is how I used to live, was I was always beating myself up because of the shoulds that I hadn't done. And I often say to my clients, we don't do shoulds because I feel... You shouldn't
should on yourself.
You shouldn't should, because it's just a really negative, you should have done something.
It's a comparison thing, isn't it? A should is a comparison. It's saying, well, other people do it, so I should.
Yeah.
This is what we're supposed to do, so I should.
Yeah. And I try and get people to do, I want. I want.
I love this.
I want to do that. Because honestly, if you say I should, basically what you're saying is you don't want to do it.
Yeah, we're totally going off on a tangent, but that's okay. I quite often bang on about I want. Because, for example, if you think about the difference between want and need, if you need something, you're focusing on the absence of that thing. You're saying, I don't have it and I need it. So there's like a panic or an anxiety around that need. It's focusing on the absence, not the obtaining.
I see what you mean.
If you say I want, you're focusing on a desire.
Yeah.
Something that you're aiming for or trying to achieve.
Yeah.
It's so much more positive to want. But growing up, we're told, do you really need it? Wants don't get, or all of those phrases that you learn growing up that really come from a place of limitation.
Yeah.
So I love wanting.
Yeah, and I think if you focus on the micro wins, do you know, and it can really be something really basic, like literally from getting up every day, brushing your teeth, washing your face, starting a new skincare regime. Going to bed in the evening, taking your supplements daily. Do you know, just something, it doesn't have to be a huge win. I think the thing with micro wins are that you stack them.
Like Tetris.
Yeah, you stack your wins, and then you can have that feeling of feeling confident or proud of yourself rather than beating yourself up all the time.
And that's where the mental health kicks in.
Yeah.
All the time you're shoulding on yourself, beating yourself up. That's when your mind, your monkey chatter, goes in these cycles of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm lazy. And then, of course, the mental health then starts to creep in.
And that's got me thinking about social media. And social media is great. We're using it right now for something really positive. But it can also be incredibly negative because people compare, don't they? We compare ourselves to... I had a phase where, for some bizarre reason, I was watching on YouTube these really organised women. I think there's like the Fly Lady, and there's like women that promote how to clean your house and be organised.
Like Marie Kondo
sort of like that. And I had a real phase of watching these people, and I mean, my God, it in a lot of ways it was really helpful, but I'm never going to be that.
Yeah.
You know,
you're setting yourself up for failure almost.
Well, yeah. So you're watching these people that, you know, it's their job to do that. They go around people's houses organising other people. So, of course, they're really good at it. That's not me. And, yeah, it got me into the point of, oh, my God, I'm never going to go to bed every night with my, I bet you do, with my sink completely clear in my kitchen.
No.
No?
I do that in the morning.
Oh, so there was this one lady, and she said the best tip that she's got is to clean your kitchen sink and have no washing up in there. And to be honest, when I wake up in the morning and I go down and it is all clear, because I've done it the night before, I do feel better. But if I don't do it, I don't want to beat myself up about it. So comparison.
My sink is full right now.
Is it? Mine's maybe a little bit.
Oh, I put the dishwasher on at night, but there's always stuff that still needs
Well, there's always a teaspoon,
always
isn't
something.
there? What happens to these teaspoons?
Yeah, and then I often don't end up doing the dishwasher until like 5 minutes before the school run.
That really surprises me. I thought you would be, like a Maria Kondo type.
Our house is generally, you know, well kept, but I mean, since having kids, I've totally I've let go of a lot of it. I really don't. My husband is a little bit more on top of it than I am. I mean, you can come around and have like a really clean cup of tea, you know. It's not one of those places where you don't want to drink out.
You can't trust the milk.
Yeah, no, but you know, we generally keep on top of it for the most part. But actually, funnily, we're totally going off on a tangent. But funnily enough, Alex's perception before he moved here was that all British people were really messy and really dirty.
Really?
Yeah.
And he's Greek?
He's Greek, and in Greek they're all spotless.
Right.
Yeah, so it's quite funny. That's just a perception.
Is that because and this is really stereotypical, but is that because in Greece traditionally the woman would stay at home?
Yeah, very possibly. Although not now, as such. Like Alex's mum has always worked.
Right.
But maybe it is a lot more traditional there, you know, in terms of what we would have been used to growing up.
So he thought that all British people were messy and dirty.
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he was really pleased when he met me, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm slightly more messy now. I'm not dirty, but I'm a bit messy sometimes.
Well, I think when you have children, I think you have to allow them to play, because my goodness, if you're tidying up after the kids when they've made a mess, well, you'd never
sit down.
You'd never sit down.
No, so we have a playroom and we just shove everything in at the end of the night and just close the doors.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but then again, that's another stress that we're adding into our lives. How many people panic clean when people come over?
Oh, my house is never as tidy as when I've got visitors.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. How is it that in 15 minutes before someone arrives, I can mop the floor, hoover...
Do more than you've done in a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm sure people aren't judgy-wudgy. I mean, maybe they are, but, you know, your friends want to come around to see you, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than judge your dusting.
I also think anyone that's had kids is not going to bat an eyelid if it's messy.
Yeah.
So it's all of these pressures that we're adding into our lives that are just building the stress and building the stress and building the stress. So we've talked about, you know, the little wins, the micro wins, and the not comparing. Of course, those things are going to be really positive to uplift mental health, and some daily practices if they work for you. But, you know, you also mentioned earlier briefly about supplements. I can say that vitamin D has had a massive impact on me.
For me, I think, and magnesium. If any of you have come to my shop or seen me, you'll know that I bang on about magnesium. But yeah, absolutely, vitamin D is so important. And mental health is related to, I mean, we always go on about diet and probably people are bored with it, but if you're not getting the right nutrients from your diet, which it's actually very difficult to do now because our soils are so depleted. That, for example, with magnesium, I think about 70% of the world's population is deemed to be low in magnesium. And essentially that's because our soils are so low in it that I really used to struggle with supplements. And I used to really believe that you should, again, that word that you want to get all of your nutrients from your diet. But unfortunately, I think even if you eat completely organically and eat low processed food products, it is actually very difficult to get all of the nutrients and micronutrients from your diet. So I think supplementing with vitamin D, certainly in the UK, because I mean, we haven't had much sun, and we're all encouraged to wear sunscreens, you know, which is going to block our skin's ability to absorb vitamin D from the sun. We don't tend to eat a lot of the natural sources of vitamin D3, which is the one that's the active form, because a lot of people don't get it in their diet. So, for example, if you're vegan or vegetarian, you're very limited to what natural sources of vitamin D3 you can get. So, for example, you can get D2 from mushrooms, but then the body has to convert that into D3. So there are certain groups of people that certainly need to supplement. And I would say if you live in the Northern Hemisphere like we do, it probably is essential to supplement with vitamin D, which is certainly during the winter, perhaps not during the summer, but with the summer that we're having so far, perhaps it is important all year.
Yeah, I mean, I take it all year round. And I actually found out through my GP that I was vitamin D deficient, and then starting to take it really made a big impact.
Did you find it increased your mood?
Massively. That's what I mean, mental health impact. It made a huge difference. And the other thing, I don't know if you've heard of this, but I've also, when I've been really in a bad place, because I don't want to do the antidepressants, I've done them before, I don't want to do it again, I've used a supplement called SAM E. Have you heard of that one?
I've not heard of that one.
I don't even know what it is. I couldn't tell you. It was proper Google research on it. But that made a huge impact. And so, more so, I would say, than when I've taken antidepressants in the past.
Really?
Yeah, so I used that, and that was really good. There are some contraindications, so if you do want to use it, check those out. But I found it very useful. I've also used like St. John's wort and stuff as well. But no, the SAMe worked really well.
Yeah, I mean, St. John's wort herbally we use for mild to moderate depression. And it's such a bizarre herb because it doesn't make you feel super, super happy. But when I've taken it in the past, it's almost like there's a click in your head. People that have had it will know, and you're like, oh, right, I'm back in the room, or I'm back to myself. And you think, wow, where was I? But again, with St. John's wort, there are contraindications. It works on a pathway, a detoxification pathway actually, in the liver, the same as some conventional drugs, so particularly the contraceptive pill. So if you're feeling low or depressed, you're on the contraceptive pill and you don't want to get pregnant, you would need to use barrier methods, which kind of defeats the object of the contraceptive pill, I know. So that's a main contraindication. And then there are also immunosuppressant drugs that are contraindicated. And we know this. There was a case study, so it was in America, and this gentleman, I think he'd had a kidney transplant. And so whenever you've had a transplant, you're put on immunosuppressant drugs, which lead you open to a lot of illnesses, and it can cause a lot of mood issues. So this gentleman went to like a health food store and bought a St. John's wort supplement over the counter. and then promptly went into rejection of his, I think it was his kidney, it might have been liver, but one of the two. And it was the St John's wort. So the St John's wort was making the immunosuppressant drug detoxify from his system quicker, so it wasn't working.
Okay.
So you don't want to do that, which is another reason why you should always check with your healthcare professional, but a lot of the times they don't understand herbal medicines, or go and see a proper herbalist for this sort of information. Yeah,
I think that's a good piece of advice, actually, is not just to try stuff willy-nilly, but to make sure that what you're taking is what you actually need and what is actually going to work for you.
And I think one of my bugbears with the supplement industry is that you'll see trends. You know, there'll be the
melatonin's a trend at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, there was black seed oil, which was a trend for a while. You know, and there's a lot of marketing, you know, that makes it a trend. Don't jump on the trends unless they're really indicated for you. I mean, by all means, try them out, but always be safe. Don't trust the advertising. I don't know how they get away with the advertising. I mean, at the moment, I see adverts for a lot of herbal supplementations for like menopausal, perimenopause. And there's one, and it really annoys me, because it's about menopausal belly. So a lot of menopausal women will find that they develop this sort of spare tire. And I feel that this particular supplement brand is targeting women that are in a vulnerable position anyway, and it's quite an expensive supplement, and it's promising a flat stomach. Well, I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. There is no supplement that is going to give, I mean, if there was, you would be a multi-millionaire.
Yeah, because everyone would be taking it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like that Ozempic, you know, the weight loss drug that they're using. And now it's coming out, you know, you see this Ozempic face, and it can cause paralysis of your digestive, you know, all of the side effects are coming out. And of course, it takes years for that to happen. So, yeah, just be careful of those sort of trends and supplement companies that are advertising their own supplement, because of course they're gonna big it up, because they're not gonna advertise their supplement and say, oh well, this doesn't work, you know,
or advertise somebody else's supplement,
because it's a conflict of interest, you know. So I think there are great supplement brands out there. But there are others that really do market badly.
What about probiotics? Because I use those as well.
I think probiotics are really good for mental health as well as digestion, absolutely.
I think the gut is massively linked to mental health.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we know that the gut bacteria actually produce most of the serotonin, which is a neurochemical, rather than the brain. And if your gut is unbalanced in favour of more of the sort of pathogenic candida or yeasts, that can absolutely affect what food you crave. So if you're full of yeasts and bad bacteria in your gut, you're going to crave ultra processed foods, sugars, and that is going to have an effect on your mental health and the inflammation in your body. And we don't know that the theory that really says that there's a misbalance in your brain of the feel-good chemicals, that's never been proven, because you can't biopsy someone's brain while they're alive and say, oh no, your serotonin is low, that's why you're depressed. So it is a theory, it's never been proved. And now there's more of a feeling in the scientific community that actually it's inflammation of the body and the brain that causes depression and anxiety. And probiotics can really help with that. And there are so many different strains of probiotic, and some are better for certain things. So for example, the lactobacillus, lacto means milk, that seems to be very, very popular for digestive IBS treatments. But if you've got a milk intolerance, it's probably not the one for you.
Yeah.
You know, so again, there are so many out there, and it can be a minefield. But essentially, yeah, I think they're really good.
And what's the difference between a probiotic and a pre and probiotic?
So a prebiotic is essentially the food that the bacteria would eat.
Okay.
So essentially prebiotics would be things that are called long chain polysaccharides. So they're really long sugar molecules that our body can't break down, but the bacteria can. And then that feeds the bacteria. So taking a probiotic and a prebiotic together really is the best way, because then your body's natural flora is going to maintain a balance. So you shouldn't have to take a probiotic every day. You should sort of be able to seed your gut. And if we weren't surrounded by chemicals, then probably that would be it. But I think because of environmental issues, chlorine in water, you know, there are other factors that, you know, some people would say absolutely you should be eating probiotics or fermented foods daily.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then there was something else I was going to say, and it's escaped my brain. Another supplement or something to talk about is gone. Oh, I want to talk about the book Grain Brain.
Oh, yes. Dr. Perlmutter. You're never going to forget that. A fantastic book. And he talks about the link between grains, all grain, but specifically gluten grains. And the gluten grains would be wheat, barley, rye and oats. But also other grains essentially can cause symptoms that are very similar in some people to schizophrenia. Because when we think of gluten intolerance or celiac disease, we think of digestive problems.
It's the same for me. When I tell people I'm gluten-free, they automatically assume it's digestive. Like, actually, it's not that. It's like, it's fatigue, it's mental health, it's, you know, all sorts of other things. It's not specifically a digestive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, when I gave up gluten, I think it was after reading the Grain Brain book, actually, or certainly around that time. And yeah, it was like a light went on in my brain. You know, that sort of fuzzy, you get so used to it. This is the thing. That
you don't know what's normal.
No.
Because it is your norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we sort of think, don't we, that it's usual to wake up in a coma and have to turn the snooze button off a million times and then drag yourself out of bed. Well, I don't have that now. Like, I wake up at 5:30 and I'm awake.
Yeah, I don't set an alarm at all. I mean, my kids wake me up, but I'm not a snoozer anymore.
No.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of anything worse than laying there.
Yeah.
But I think that really was due to gluten for me. And I think it is incredibly addictive, because all glutinous food or grainy foods, breads, pastries, well, they're hyper palatable, aren't they? They're really, really nice. But it's only when you come off of it, and you need to come off of it for quite a time.
3 months, because I lost all cravings after 3 months, and then I had no desire to even go back. Yeah.
And I think that is important, that people know that it does take 3 months to wash out your system.
100% as well, no cheats.
Yeah,
because you just set yourself back 3 months.
Yeah.
You have a cheat.
Yeah. It really is important. And I find a lot of people that I recommend or advise them to go on an exclusion diet, they'll maybe do it for a week, a month, and they'll say, oh, it didn't make any difference.
That's exactly where I was with my gluten-free experience throughout my life. I kept trying it, would do 80% or would just do a week or a month, and it doesn't work. And it was only when you explained to me the importance of 3 months and being 100% that I did it. Yeah. And then I get it.
Or the other one that is a classic is, oh, but I don't eat much bread. And then when you talk to them about their diet, they're having probably at least 2 slices of bread most days, along with all the hidden gluten.
Oh, it's in everything.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, for example, who would think that sausages would be full of wheat? But they call it rusk, and it's a filler because it's a lot cheaper. Soy sauce.
Yeah.
That one blew my mind because traditionally they wouldn't put wheat in soy sauce, but unless you use a specific gluten-free soy sauce, it will be in it. Most gravies, most ketchups, most sauces are going to have gluten.
Most everything.
Yeah. And I think that's quite difficult.
Even a bowl of cereal.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what puts a lot of people off as well, that they'll say things, well, what can I eat?
Food. Real
well,
food.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I try not to say that, but...
Look, it's in society because it's addictive, it's cheap to produce, it makes a lot of money, it's delicious, it fills a hole, it's very cultural. But if you were to eat a traditionally kind of, made through a traditionally milled flour and a traditional baked loaf of bread, it wouldn't have a high gluten content. It is the processing of the gluten where we buy it in packets and it's stuffed full of crap. That is what the issue is.
Yeah. I mean, if you went to France and ate their traditional baguette, it would be a completely different experience in bread, because it's cooked daily.
Yeah.
They leave it to rise overnight or for 12 hours. So the yeast actually breaks down a lot of the gluten.
It's commercialism that's created gluten intolerance, really.
Yeah. And they've sort of created a strain of wheat that is homogenised to the point that it's very, very different to the traditional wheats that we would have eaten. Yeah.
But we always end up talking about gluten-free after everything we talk about, don't we? Because it's so important.
Yeah, I think the problem with gluten-free is, and I think it's fine to do this as a transition to eat the gluten-free products, but...
They're just full of as much crap.
They are full of as much, absolutely.
But you're right, it gets you through that 3-month period, and then once you've lost the cravings, you don't really crave that stuff either.
Yeah. I mean, when I gave up, it's much more expensive. There tends to be much more sugar in it. And something that I found out recently, which, do you know what, this is going to really shock you. So, because gluten is glutinous, it binds things. That's why it's called gluten. When you don't have that in flour, manufacturers use something, and you all have heard of this, xanthan gum.
Yeah.
Do you know where xanthan gum comes from?
No.
Well, I didn't know where it came from, and I've just recently finished the book, Ultra Processed People.
I've got that book now.
Highly recommend it. Well, xanthan gum is bacterial slime.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah. It's actually a bacterial slime or biofilm. And the reason why they use it is because it's a slime, it's very good at replacing gluten to keep things together or bound, or it's very good for making sauces thick but pourable.
Right.
But it's essentially and it's what even worse, it comes from a particular bacteria. You know, if you leave your vegetables too long and they become mouldy and there's that sort of black mould and it kind of goes slimy, that's where it's from. Yeah. Xanthan gum, who knew? I didn't know. But that's one thing to think about. Are you eating your gluten-free products?
Yes, because in most gluten-free recipes, they say get gluten-free flour and add xanthan gum and tapioca starch normally.
Yeah.
That would create something that's more
sort of bread-like.
Yeah, or cake-like.
And tapioca, that's another interesting. So tapioca comes from is it a vegetable? I think it's a vegetable, tuber, a cassava. And cassava is actually quite high naturally in cyanide. So, do we really want to be eating something that's actually... I mean, it's not high in cyanide to the point where obviously it's going to kill you, but potentially, how much is okay?
How much are you eating over time?
Yeah, because there are tapioca chips now that you can buy. And let's just say you were eating tapioca chips. You made a cake with tapioca starch. I mean, how much would be a problem? I mean, cyanide is pretty dangerous.
That's really interesting. All right. So we covered a plethora of topics there.
I think we always do.
Yeah,
we went off on one, didn't we? We've talked menopause, we've talked adrenals, we've talked micro wins. I think that's something that I would really like to finish on.
Yeah.
Let's do micro wins. Let's make ourselves be our own cheerleaders.
Yeah, raise our energy a bit.
Yeah, rather than beating ourselves up with what we don't want is the shoulds.
So, in that note, tell us what your micro wins are. Give us some comments. What are the things that you do daily that give you a micro win?
I think that's really good.
A little micro whoop whoop.
A whoop whoop. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we could have probably talked about that for another 2 hours, but we've got life to do.
And I will remember to bring the oil and the beeswax and my little bain marie and everything back, and we can do a little lip balm session.
Lovely.
Are you still using chapstick?
Yeah. I'm not going to give up until I've got an alternative.
Well, we'll make you next week. Yeah, we'll make that next week.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.